theyeshiva.net.
So the Pasuk says in Parshas Beshalach, after the story of the splitting of the sea and the Jews passing through it, the summation of the story, the way the Torah chooses to summarize the story is, and we say it every single morning, Vayaar Yisroel es hayod hagdola asher asa Havaya b'Mitzrayim, Vayiru ha'am es Havaya, Vayaminu b'Havaya u'b'Moshe Avdei. The moment you see a sentence with 3 times the same word, especially the most important word in Tanakh, right? You have to perk up and say, wait. 3 times the same word in the same sentence, Lahavdil defies the laws of grammar, syntax, and presentation. Mela, you have it twice new. The beginning, Vayaar Yisroel, Sayad Agdel Shrasa Havaya b'Mitzrayim. Yisroel saw the great hand that Hashem performed in Mitzrayim. Okay. Vayiru ha'am es Havaya, and the nation feared Havaya. Vayaminu boy, or Vayiru ha'am, right? Vayaminu ba'Havaya. It's a continuation. It's the same sentence, not even a new sentence. It's the same, literally, it's the same continuation of words. They feared Havaya and they believed in Havaya.
2 different concepts. 2 different concepts.
And the second one, suddenly there's also Moshe. Vayiru es Havaya, they fear Havaya. They believe in Havaya and in Moshe. We say this every morning. Some of us sitting at this table have been saying this for many decades, believe it or not. But that only allows you to focus less, not more. Because, yeah, sure, you can start changing davening. Yeah. So you have 3 times the same word. Yeah. Vayiru amas Havaya, vayaminu ba'Havaya u'b'Moshe Avdei. Unless it's not the same word. It's the same letters, but it's not the same word. It's the same letters, so it looks like the same word, but it's not the same message, it's not the same energy. And to understand this, the Baal HaTanya brought up the big question, that Amunah should precede Yira, Yira should not precede Amunah. Some awareness should precede an emotion, whether an emotion of love, an emotion of fear, an emotion of awe. The way we explain Amunah is, I believe that this exists, or I believe in the power of what exists. Oh, yeah, really? So once you have that awareness, okay, that usually can trigger deep emotions. Hence, I love, I'm scared, I'm in awe, I have reverence, whatever. I'm drawn close, I recoil. But what if this Havaya is not one dimension? As he says, there's 2 concepts of Havaya. What do you mean 2 concepts? Hashem is one, but there's 2 names. Vayavar Hashem al panav vayikra, Hashem, Havaya, Ke'erachav v'chanun. Okay, here it's not just 2 sentences, not even 1 sentence. It's repeating the same word, one after another. Havaya. So he introduced us that there's a concept called Shem Havaya de L'Sata and Shem Havaya de Leila. Yeah. Shem Havaya de L'Sata means, so to speak, a lower dimension. And again, the word lower is really a very inaccurate translation. We'll see what it means, like it's lower, in other words, yeah, relative to the higher, it's lower, but the concept of lower is the way Havaya is manifested in a concept we call L'Sata, lower reality, or our experience of reality is better. And then there's Shem Havaya de Leila. What's the difference? Both are Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, meaning both require or both are represented by the process of 4 dimensions, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. That process exists in both. That's why it's the same letters, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. But still, this is the process happening in Shem Havaya de Lasata, the lower Havaya, and this is the process, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, happening in Shem Havaya de Leila. Vayavar Hashem al Panav Vayikra. Hashem is these 2 Havayas. Vayiru ha'am es Havaya, Vayaminu ba'Havaya is not the same. Vayiru ha'am es Havaya, he said the Shem Havaya de Lasata. Vayaminu ba'Havaya is Shem Havaya de Leila, the higher Havaya. Lasata in Aramaic is lower. Right? Tata gavar, ilah gavar. In Aramaic, tata, lasata. In Hebrew, it would be lamata. In Aramaic, it's called lasata. I just don't want you to get confused. Lasata is like saying lamata, the lower concept.
Fear has a more base consideration. Yaminu, it's a much higher level.
Yeah, he says it's yirei boishes, so maybe the translation not fear as much as awe. Awe is probably a better translation. He says yiris boishes. It's like an inner awe, like boishes is like I don't know what the word is. It's usually translated as shame, but it's more than shame. You lose yourself in the awe of something. The Hebrew word for fear, pachat. Now,
it seems like boishes is when you recognize your position in the relationship.
You don't have place to put yourself. It's too big. It's a very meaningful emotion. The presence of real greatness. It's not. I'm not embarrassed because I did something yesterday, and then you're gonna find out about it. It's not that type of shame. It's a type of, I don't know, it's like you have to experience it. Huh? Yeah.
It seems to be different than the concept of bittul that we always talk about. One with Ein Sof as opposed to recognizing, boishes is like I'm recognizing how...
Your ego loses itself. It's like...
You're consumed.
Yeah, it's of course a form of bittul, but it's called yiras boishes. It's like meshemtzach. What do I mean meshemtzach? It's not I'm embarrassed because I did something wrong, and you see it, and somebody's going to find out, and you're going to tell, and it's going to be in the newspapers. That's also a legitimate fear that a person has. It's an embarrassment in the sense of not embarrassed like in an unhealthy way because I did a crime yesterday and nobody found out and suddenly you found out, so I'm embarrassed. The boishes is with my metzias. It's a shame of my very metzias. In other words, it's just in a state of awe and reverence. Yeah. The presence of greatness. Moshe says, "Asura nova eres hamar hagadol hazeh." You don't want to fail yourself, because if you fail yourself, you can't experience what you're experiencing.
It seems like if you find the word for it, it's not it.
Yeah, you don't want to put it in context. You want to be in its context. That's what boishes is. Yeah, it's something that's so transcendent and infinite. It's an awe. Now, like everything in life, it can be misconstrued. It could be manipulative. A person who's wise and sly can manipulate you into that. So that's why many of us, especially sitting around the table, are very allergic to these concepts. Because it's like, I'm not melting away in anybody. I'm going to retain my full composure. But when one taka approaches something that is truly transcendent, that level of greatness, then my stubbornness to hold on to my ego becomes my own obstacle. It becomes my own prison, becomes my own trap. And we understand why we have that trap. We want to protect ourselves. Because when yira is misplaced, just like I said a few nights ago, when humility is misplaced, right? An vasnusa shel scharya benaf, the Baal Shem Tov says, misplaced humility can destroy a Beis HaMikdash. Misplaced fear or even awe can be very damaging. But really, yira's boishas, when it's appropriate, is the most appropriate feeling. So that's vayiru. And then there's something called vayaminu. Completely different experience. And it has to say havaya twice. It can say vayiru es havaya vayaminu boy. Uvayiru vayaminu ba'avaya. That would completely miss the target. Vayiru amas havaya. Vayaminu ba'avaya. And here at the yaminu, there's also another element, Moshe Avdei. And this is all a continuation to the first havaya. Vayaar Yisroel sayod hagdola asher asa havaya b'Mitzrayim. What does all this mean? What does this mean? What's Shem Havaya de Lasata? Shem Havaya de Lasata, he said, is the way, let's put it this, it's the imprint of the Ein Sof vis-a-vis, through and in the world. And what do we mean the world? We don't only mean the planet and the cosmos. We mean, he said, every world. It's the way divinity is manifested through existence. And what is existence? Existence doesn't have one definition. Existence has, I don't know how many definitions. Every creature has a definition of existence, as legitimate as any other creature. Why do I say as legitimate? Because that's Havaya. Havaya, Ein Sof condenses himself so that a mosquito, right, or a beetle, or a wasp can have its DNA, which allows for its perception of its existence. And this is very important. And a human being, for his perception of existence, obviously more grand. And for a cow, its perception of existence, maybe more grand, I don't know. Depends where you are. Adam uvehemet eshiyah Hashem. Yeah? Was there a mice? So Shem Havaya de Lasata is, when you say Shem Havaya de Lasata, it's not one Shem Havaya. Shem Havaya, basically, if you want to put it this way, it's how God constitutes the DNA of life. DNA is Shem Havaya. There's even the professor who tried to show in the images of DNA, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. Well, that's a separate Indian. But the concept is, it's the way undefined reality assumes and becomes the divine battery and electricity of existence. I can't see electricity. Nobody has ever saw electricity. But I certainly see the impact of electricity. Right? If only that your phone is dead. Which can create a tremendous crisis in today's world, and you lose your entire identity. So I see the impact of it. I see the imprint of it. My laptop is dead. My refrigerator is not working. My vacuum cleaner is not working. My AC is not working. Yeah. Now, the electricity doesn't change, but the electricity completely changes in its impact. The electricity in the laptop has a different effect than the electricity on your air conditioner or your toaster oven or your microwave oven. This is to warm up the rice or the broccoli. And this is to have your holy iPhone operating or unholy iPhone operating. So that's the difference in now, I understand they don't have perceptions of existence, but imagine they were conscious creatures. Robots, soon emotional intelligence, yeah? They have their way of perceiving existence based on the battery. Based on the consciousness that's imbued. And everything has its level of consciousness, including a rock. The Yisroel says a rock also has a nefesh. All this is included in Shem Havaya de Lasata. It's the Havaya that's manifested, that's expressed, that flows through every nook and cranny of our cosmos, every blade of grass and every flake of snow and every droplet of rain and every beating heart and every grazing mammal. And every star, every black hole, every molecule, every atom, every particle. From the largest to the smallest, it's all the imprint of the Shem Havaya, the Lasata that's manifested through the world, and every world through its unique chemistry and the identity that it brings to reality. And within each world itself, every creature in its own way. And he says, this is why we call the Bria Me'ayin Liyesh. And the big question was, Me'ayin? It's from nothing. Mimcha HaKail. The answer is, how much of the Mimcha is expressed in the Yesh? And you know what the answer is? Ayin. See, the world is Mimcha, it's from you, it's not Me'ayin. How much of the you, of the infinity, the pure infinity, is expressed in the Yesh? If it would be, then the very identity of creation would cease to exist. So Havaya Legabi, the Ein Sof itself, is called Ayin. Because it has to go through such a condensement of reality, which is the Yud, and then the Hey, and then the Vav, and the Hey, which represents the four processes to be able, for Ein Sof to be able to become relatable to the universe. What do I mean relatable? To condense itself in a way that, what is its definition? My definition is your DNA, your soul, your electricity. And the first step is always Yud, which represents the ultimate tzimtzum, the condensing of all the energy into a seminal point, and only then must there be an expansion. And as the metaphor the Balatanya often brings, we learned this in the summer Maimon that we learned from Reb Hillel about this 3 weeks of mourning and the Shevat and the Chemt, if you remember, we learned this mashal at length, that a teacher, a great communicator, who may be a genius and a Gan Olam, wants to teach. The first step that's needed is Yud. What is Yud? Yud is not an act of self-expression. It's an act of actually self-restriction. Condensing all the information into a Yud, which seems so tiny. Because if the teacher expresses himself, it's actually going to become a migraine headache for the student. The student will get nothing from it. He must completely imagine the world of the student, his or her Weltanschauung, their mindset, their perception, and then take all the information and condense it into a tiny, tiny point, filtered, condensed, restricted, compressed. Why? So that the student can ultimately absorb it and it could become his. Because the definition of pedagogy is that I'm communicating not at you, but to you. And not even to you, in you. And that's not an easy thing to do this Yud. Now from the Yud you have to go to Hey, because you can't teach a Yud. The Yud has to be expanded, but it's the Yud that's expanded, not pre-Yud. The Yud now becomes a Hey, very elaborate. That's all still in the teacher's preparation. Vav is the communication. Look at the Vav. The Vav is actually the flow of energy. And the Hey is the absorption within the student. What's called Shetach HaMakabel, the territory of the recipient. And you can get stuck at any one of these 4 points. There has to be that flow. There's something called Shem Havaya Kesidroi and Shem Havaya Shaloi Kesidroi, meaning the order of Yud and Hey and Vav Hey in the proper order. And then sometimes Shaloi Kesidroi, not in the order. There's a certain flow of light that comes through Yud and Hey and Vav. The Baal Shem Tov once said that when you see a poor man, you give tzedakah. So he says, don't wait till he sticks out his hand. You initiate it. They said, why? So he says it's pashut. You take out a coin. If you initiate, take out a coin. Yeah, what they would call a kopke. We would call a dime, a penny, a nickel. He says the coin is a yud. It's a little circle. You put it in your hand. Your hand look like a hay. 5 fingers is hay, and it looks like a hay. And then you stretch out your hand. So what do you have? You have a vav. You put it into the poor man's hand, so you have a hay. He says, Ist da reingebracht Shem Havaya in the Welt. Yud Kevavke is just manifested in the world. He says, but if the poor man has to stretch out his hand first, and then you take out the coin, now the energy is confused. The Vav came before the Yud, so it's Vav and Yud and Hey and Hey. He says, okay, Mela. Well, it's better than nothing, but that's not that's not the way to do it. Huh? But it's such a beautiful concept. Because he was capturing it in real life. That's when you're in touch with the energy. During 1942, Rommel was coming on Israel it was called Palestine, under the British mandate. The Nazi general Rommel was already close to Egypt, and the Jewish people who lived then in Eretz Yisrael, it was a small yishuv, 500,000 or 600,000 Jews. But there was no question, the Germans at 1942, Europe was under Hitler, and the next was the Middle East. It was Vayaar Yisroel, and the Jews didn't have doubt about what their fate is going to be. So there was tremendous dread. This is pachad, dread in the Yishuv in Eretz Yisrael. Especially, I think, summertime, 1942 or 43. There were two great tzaddikim then in Yerushalayim, the Husiatin Rebbe, the grandson of Rabbi Yisroel Rishon. His name was Rabbi Yisroel Friedman. He passed away in 49. And there was Rabbi Shloim Kazviller, also in Yerushalayim. The Rav of Bnei Brak was a Jew, Rabbi Yankel Landau. His grandson just became the Rav there. His son passed away, Rabbi Moshe Landau. He was a Chabad Chassid from the Rebbe Rashab, and he asked the Husiyat and the Rebbe if they could do a tefillah by the cave of the Chaim HaKadosh. So he agreed. So they went, a big oilam of Jews went to the Chaim, is buried on the Har HaZeisim. He came from Morocco to Yerushalayim, and he passed away Tovkuf 1740. He's buried there, and his yahrzeit is Tesvav Tammuz, I think. So they went to the Chaim, and you had the Shloim Kazvilla there, the Husiyat and the Rebbe was there, and a lot of other Jews. And they said the whole Tillim to pray for the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. And they finished Tehillim. The Husiyat and the Rebbe and the system of Ruzhin was very malchusdik, very royal. The Ruzhin himself looked like an aristocrat, to the point that people sometimes got very uncomfortable and suspicious. Yeah. Bayan is an Einikol. I'm telling you, the original Rabbi Yisroel Rishon. But he was a Kaddish Alien. He was a very, very holy Jew. It was a style of malchus, of royalty, which, other rabbis in the time didn't. It was Eastern Europe, there was tremendous poverty. But this was his was derech hasiyatna. So externally, it looked very balabatish. But some of them were very holy Jews. So he stood there, very composed. He finished Tillim, but he was still standing there, very quiet. So they started Tillim again. I think they davened for a few hours until he finished. The Husiyat and Rebbe finished, and he says, "I heard this from a Jew who told me he heard it from somebody who was there. So it seems like a pretty authentic story. I didn't hear it from a person who was there. I heard it from somebody who told me he heard it from somebody who was there. He was a 12-year-old kid, and he told him that he was there." He says, the Deutsch wird nicht kommen in Eretz Yisrael. The Germans will not be able to enter Eretz Yisrael. People were afraid, very afraid, because they heard what's happening in Europe. So he had a chassid there, even though he respected his Rebbe, but he blurted out, he said, "Wie weißt du?" It's like we would say, we've been sold enough Brooklyn bridges, "Wie weißt du?" So he said, "As ich geendigt davenen, hab ich gesehen Shem Havaya Kesidrei." Because when I finished davening, I saw Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey in the order. That's what he said. That's how I know. Okay. I'm not going to explain the story. I'm just telling you a story that happened. If you were thinking I'm going to explain this, I'm not going to explain it. Just wanted to say that. It was an amazing Yeshua what happened. That's why Jews in Israel were saved. Yeah, but there's something considerable. Yeah. So this process, how much of the Yud, how much of the pure Ein Sof is captured in the Yud? The answer is, from the teacher's perspective, everything is there. But from the student's perspective, it's called ayin. What do we mean ayin? Right? May ayin liyesh means how much of infinite energy, for us, DNA is incredible. It's infinite. It's taka incredible. But relative to the pure Ein Sof, it's a condensement into Yud. You'll almost call it ayin. Ayin means it's like, what's the value of how much of the sun, of the intensity, the electricity, the electromagnetic power of the sun is captured in a ray of light that flows and shines through your window on a beautiful Thursday morning to brighten up your kitchen and your dining room. It's very significant, that ray of light. Well, I'm talking about one ray of light, relative to the sun. You'll call it ayin. Ayin. That's may ayin liyesh. The world comes not because it comes may ayin. It comes from Hashem, Yud Kei Vavke. But the energy that's manifested in creation is the God that I know through creation. It's called the koyach hapoyel benifel, the imprint of the Creator in the creation. The core of all consciousness is divine. The core of every atom is divine. The core of every cell is divine. The Dvar Hashem, that's what it is. It's spiritual energy. What state of spiritual energy? That's called Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. What's Shem Havaya de La'ela, the Balatanya said. What's Shem Havaya de La'ela? Also Yud Kei Vavke. Meaning also has a tzimtzum, because if not it wouldn't be Yud. It's also Yud Kei Vavke, which are called names. And all names are relationships. That's what a name is. Why do you have a name? That I should be able to identify you. Without a name, why do people have names? If you're living yourself on an island your whole life, you don't need a name. You usually don't talk to yourself by your name, right? Some people do. There's somebody here, I hear him sometimes speak to himself, he calls himself by his name. But it's part of a healing method. It's an interesting healing method. Because if you don't know you, sometimes you have to get to know yourself, at least as a stranger. Yeah, zisha zukt. Yeah. No, it's something. But the point is, usually you're having a conversation with yourself. But if I want to talk to you, I have to call you. The names are tools of communication. Also, I don't only mean your name, Zelig, Chaim, Yankel. I'm also talking about a name in terms of a person has a name, right? What's a name? A name is your name, the way we know you, your reputation. I don't know you, I know your name. Nobody knows anybody else. What do I know? I know what I see, I know what you tell me, I know what's seen, what's visible. So you say, Shem Havaya, what's Shem Havaya? It's the way Ein Sof is in a relationship with a universe. But that relationship requires, more than everything else, the suspension of infinity for the sake of consciousness, even consciousness on the highest spiritual level. That's why Yud Kei Vavke is not only the lower world, even the highest world. What's Shem Havaya de La'ela? Shem Havaya de La'ela is, he gives the mashal. Before you create anything, it's always first must be created in your mind. It's only successful that way. Everything, this is what people do during different parts of the day. You daydream. If you'll ask around the people who are daydreaming right now as I'm speaking, and I don't mean to disturb you at all, you're probably creating a company. If you're Jewish, you're creating a company as I speak, right? You're creating an organization, a website, a company, buying a building, selling a building. I hope you sold it already for a lot of money. Make sure. How did I know? Yeah.
Easy as that, you would answer.
Yeah, but there's a Shia before Shemay Esther, so you could build another company. Why you have to be stingy? Yeah. And what do they say? Two people fail in life, those who don't have a plan and those who stick to their plan, right? But you have to have a plan. That plan begins right here. The architect doesn't begin right away with give me a piece of paper. No. It's all in here. The composer doesn't begin with writing notes. It's all in here. And you could see it. If you have an x-ray of his mind, he sees it. It's all in. Nobody would know it. The same is true with the speaker. The same is true with the writer. The same is true with the artist. The same is true with the producer. The same is true with the contractor. The same is true with every artist and every businessman and or woman and in any area in life. The whole creation of anything, whatever it is, before it's externalized in the concrete world, it first is created in the mind. Now, when we create something in our mind, it's really worthless. You built the house in your mind, you built the company in your mind, right? But, because if it stays there, right? If it stays there. If it doesn't stay there, that's really the genesis of creation. When you're talking about ultimate creation, this is really a layer of identity. It's really a layer of existence. What does the world look like within God's mind, so to speak? It's also Yud Kei Vav Kei. Because that creation is a Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey. But that's called, he said, Alma de Iskasya, the concealed world. In other words, the entire world, the way he puts it is a Lashon of Kabbalah, Allah b'Ritzoynai. It ascended in his will to create a world. The way it is in that state of Ratzain, you have all of reality. But all of reality is then called Shem Havaya de La'ela, not Shem Havaya de L'Sata. It's not externalized outside, but it's completely internalized. And that's why it's called Iskasya. Iskasya means it's concealed. What is it concealed by? It's like when you create this in your mind, there's no way of me seeing it. Because it's inside of you and it's completely part of you and it's completely unified with you and it's clearly an expression of you. Isgalia is a whole different world. It's the way it assumes already a distinct identity outside of you. That's Shem Havaya de L'Sata versus Shem Havaya de L'Elam. Now you'll say, what's the difference? Whatever is in your mind comes out. But there's a very big difference between the two. Because in the first, when it's inside of you, it's completely one with you. There's no separation. There's no dissonance. There's no alienation. There's no detachment. Because it's completely inside of me. It's
can be very ambivalent about something. There is dissonance there.
within yourself. Right. But we're talking about the world, the way it is perceived on that level. It's from a place of pnimius, of internalization. To give a mashal by people, you could see the same thing. I could know you, but how do I know you? I only know you, from trying to understand what I see. And because I try to understand what I see, so therefore I come to a certain recognition of you. And sometimes that's how you know yourself. You know yourself from the outside and then you go to the inside. What's the beginning of a real relationship? The real relationship is when you allow me into your own space, your intimate space. And what's a deeper relationship? What's a deeper relationship? Yeah, there's relationship, there's acquaintances, there's friends, there's close friends, there's best friends, there's a best friend. What is it? It's inviting you or me into a more intimate space, all based on the space that I know within myself, but at least I'm inviting you into a more intimate space to see things from my inner world. You know, it's always fascinating. You read a book of somebody and it changes your life maybe, or you hear something and it affects you, but you never met the author. You never met him. But you imagine what he looks like, you know? And then sometimes you'll read an interview, you know, you wonder, what does breakfast look like? What does lunch look like? What's the schedule? Why are people fascinated by this? I want to know, you know, what makes you tick? You know, what do you do when you get depressed? You know, sometimes you're a young person, you develop these, you know, these people who leave an impact on you, but always from a distance. You don't know who they are. Maybe stories, maybe you literate, whatever it is. And then you get a glimpse, you know, come, spend time. It's a whole different world. Now, sometimes you're very disappointed. Distance is very good. In fact, I would say many great people, the further you remain from them, the greater they remain. I don't mean, the closer you get, you often get very disappointed. What? Familiarity breeds contempt. And it's not about judgment. It's just, there's even in halach, it says, HaMelech ein roya noisek shu aram. You're not supposed to be in a mikveh with the king. You're not supposed to see a king by the barber. He's not. Why? Why not? Why not? But nobody knows that the melech has to go to the mikveh. He has to go to a bathroom. He has to get a haircut. The pshat is there's a certain awe and respect that comes from a distance. Suddenly I see, you're just, in Yiddish there's an expression for this, but it's not for now. But basically you do what everybody else does.
But the greater you are.
You have individuals that the closer you get to them, the more distance you feel. But that's very unique. Because usually you get close and you see, he also has a temper, as I chatzadreita a bissel. He also gets into his moods. A person is a person. From distance you can create an aura, a halo and this. You come out, those are always, it's all mitigated. But a relationship, that's not a relationship. That's a relationship from a distance. I read your book. I saw your architecture. I went to the museum. I saw your piece of art. I know you. Do I know you? But do I know you? What do I know about you? I know part of your brilliance, no question. I know the ray of light that came from the sun. It's brilliant. I know your brilliance. I saw your art. Even that, I don't know your whole brilliance. I saw 20 pieces of art. I read your book. I heard you speak. Fine. I saw your actions. I saw the imprint. I look at the businesses you created. I see I could see your charisma. I see a lot. I see a lot. But how much do I see really? There's no and even what I see, what's the relationship? Where's the beginning of a relationship? The beginning of a relationship is actually the vulnerability of seeing everything inside. What does the inside look like? What we call an X-ray, an MRI. Now, if you want to remain a celebrity, you don't allow that. Because again, it could compromise it. But if you want a relationship, you must have that. Why do so many celebrities drug themselves up or kill themselves? Because of this. He comes home from a concert, okay? There were 80,000 people at the concert. They were licking his saliva. The saliva that he spit, they lick it. He comes home, yeah? His wife says there's garbage to take out. They're coming tomorrow morning. They're coming at 7 o'clock. You don't go to sleep before you take out the garbage, okay? I'm doing it already for a month. And why'd you come home so late? Why'd you come home so late? You texted me you're coming home 2 hours ago. And he's like, 80,000 people saw him and were ready they melted in ecstasy. Yeah? Ecstasy, one type of ecstasy, another type of ecstasy. But whatever it was. And suddenly he came home and then she's like, take out the garbage. It's too hard. The dissonance. Am I a god or am I not a god? By them, I'm God. Here, I'm human. You have to choose. And you know what most people choose, right? It's more glorious to be God than to be human. So they get divorced. And you live in your own world, in your own cocoon, but you're really desperate for real relationships. So what do? You do other things. It's a very tragic situation. It's the failure to be able to go into a real relationship. And if you're a talented person, you understand this very well. If you're not talented, then you won't understand this. Baruch Hashem. People who are brilliant artists know this very well. It's a tremendous tension. Reb Tzadok says that this was Yoshka's problem. And he says this was Oisei Ish's problem. And he says it about one more person. Shapsi Tzvi. He says they both had this issue. They were very, very deep people. And when your imagination works, and you're very powerful. And you forget your humanness. And it's very tempting. Who wants to remember that they're mortal, they're finite, they're naked, they're small, they're in pain, they cry like everybody else. I don't. You become like superhuman, Batman, Superman. Nietzsche's Übermensch. Übermensch. You understand? But you have no relationship. Why? Because you don't let anybody inside your life. Because you know why? It's pretty messy inside. The selbe bus of Adam, like everybody else.
Nivus.
Huh?
Moshe and a Nivus. That was the opposite.
It's a very vulnerable experience. Who wants to do that? You're Teufels Dinyan. Huh? I'm just using this as a marshal. You want to know what the nimshal is? Maybe the marshal is the nimshal. But this is a beginning of a glimpse to understand what the Balatanya is teaching us here. At least one aspect of it. There's much more, but at least one aspect of it. In other words, do we know what type of relationship do we have with God? So he says, Paroi was ready for the first one, but not for the second one. Mia Vayaar she'eshma b'koila. I'm fine. God wrote a beautiful book. God is the best, greatest architect. I'm good. I want a personal relationship. I want you. I love your books. I love your works. I love your brilliance. I love your DNA. I'm fascinated by it. But I want you. I want you. What's called Alma de Iskasya. I want to be able to go into your mind. I want to touch your soul.
Maybe that's just why Paro was very late to the denial.
Yeah. The Nilus. Yeah.
Hide himself there
Yeah.
to show that he's
Yeah.
in denial.
In denial. And he did it in denial. Pun intended. For the first, it could be Yira. For the second, you need Emunah. Because Emunah, unlike most people, many touch Emunah as faith, meaning blind faith, I believe, we see here that Emunah is deeper than Yira. Yira comes from the same letters like Re'iyah. You can only experience this type of awe if you see it. If you don't see it, if you're far away, you won't experience awe. Real awe is when you're close. You know, there could be two people in the presence of an extraordinary great man. One person is not in awe. The other person is in awe. At the surface, it looks like the person is in awe is like, is more childlike. The person who's not in awe is bigger, but sometimes the opposite. The person who doesn't get it can afford not to be in awe. The person who gets it, you can't afford not to be in awe. You get it. When we're looking at it from a place of abuse or manipulation, then the one who's in awe is Nebach, he lost himself. When you're looking at it from a place of emes, Yira comes from Re'iyah. I see too much. I don't have a choice but to be in awe. How could you not be in awe? Like, are you not human? Don't you have a soul? Like, look what's in front of you. Look what you're in contact with. You want to remain in your own ego? Okay, Nebach. That could be in Havaya de Lasata, Yiru. Emunah is deeper than that. What is Emunah? Emunah is the ability to touch and experience and be in a relationship with that I cannot see, that I cannot even appreciate, that I cannot even wrap my brain around in any way. Emunah is a name for a relationship. It's my relationship with something that I cannot put into any context. That's what Emunah is. It's a very deep relationship, Emunah. We call it faith, like I believe you. I don't know, I'm not sure. Like what we call Emunah, I'm not really sure, but my grandmother used to think so, so why not, Somebody once said, I used to be an atheist, but they don't have any holidays. You want blintzes. You mean impeachment? What? Oh, you mean Soviet? In other words, religion, it gives good structure. The Vils Latkes, the Vils Blintzes, the Vils Matzi, you want to go on summer vacation, you want to go pay. It says action. Yeah, I believe. Do I know? Yeah, yeah. My grandmother is good enough. It works for me. It's a nice culture. It's good shalom zachas, and the community supports the chasanas. Why not? And the Shiner's soup. Where do you get Shiner's soup? If you're an atheist, you have soup. And you know what? It's a powerful idea too, community and all that. But the Nikud of Emunah is something else. The Nikud of Emunah is a relationship that's extremely profound. It never competes with intelligence. It transcends it. Emunah that competes with intelligence, you have to be careful of. Emunah never competes with intelligence. Emunah means I don't want my life to be limited by that which my brain can wrap itself around. Emunah is actually extremely intelligent. It's so intelligent that I want to go beyond intelligence. Not because I'm dumb and cultish. It's very different. Our emunah is the opposite of what most people think emunah. That's what you see in this maimer. Emunah comes once you do yira. Now is emunah. Vayaminu ba'avaya is a different avaya. Shem avaya delayla. Okay, we'll stop here. It's not this emunah. No. Well, the next year is Monday. I'm going to Chicago for Shabbos. Tomorrow there's no shir. Tomorrow's Friday, right? Tomorrow's Friday, yeah. According to Lasata Laela.
There's a hemshech to the Hashem.
I don't know how this relates, but is there such thing as
What?
I teaches the Mishnah. Moshe is only Yodai B'fnei. It's Chaim. Why? Because it involves the Hashem Havai. Moshe is Havai.
Yeah. Yitzias HaShabbos, yeah. Das ist Stayim Shein Arba. Is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Stayim Shein Arba. B'fnim, Stayim Shein Arba b'chutz.
That's why it's Chaim.
Yeah, it's a hafle dike Torah. It's verstanden a bissel. Moshe, can I trouble you to take out the Gemaras over there?
such thing as out-of-body experience? Does that relate to the emotion?
Yeah.
Or is that just a make-believe kind of wish? I mean, people say that they go through a death phase and they see the body and the light and all these things. I don't know how that relates to what we were learning, but
I hear you.
I wonder if there's something.
I don't know. I'm sure it's connected, but I'm not familiar with it. It's hard to give an illustration of Yiddish Boishes because people didn't see anybody that they could experience it. Verstehst? Huh?
It's a beautiful letter from Jacobson. The Woche wrote to him that he doesn't see that he's Matzliach, from the Zionism. And he says, what do you think that Chaim and all the Gedolim, born Agoda, give him a Sheva, people Tzadik and come.
Yeah. Ich hab geschleppt 6 Schonnächte, The lines there were 2-3 hours.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.